Okay, we're gonna resume our meeting here. We got our workshop coming up. We got two agenda on our workshop, and they all important, but nothing like the finance, right? So we're gonna be looking at the 2022 year-end finance report, and we have our finance director, Paula Painter. Paula.
Thank you, Council President Boyce, members of City Council. I'm happy to be here today. First off, we're going to tag team this. First, I'm going to give the 2022 year-end report, and then Michelle's going to come up and give you a quick update on the monthly report. So we will tag team it, and we'll try to get through this stuff pretty quickly. Before we get into 2022, I'd like to take 1 minute to talk about 2021. Really looking back in the mirror. Last week I received notification from the Government Finance Officers Association that the City of Kent has received the Certificate of Achievement in Financial Reporting for the 2021 annual financial report. So really exciting news. Kudos to our team who worked really hard to get that put together. It was really a joint effort. Last year for 2021 we were down staff, and nearly everyone in the department pitched in where they could. So really kudos to them.
And we see this before, right? Have we received
this? We receive it, yes. We received it 32 years-ish.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
A long time.
Especially during COVID, like you say, to be able to get it. That's pretty special.
Yeah, it's been really a challenge, especially when you're short-staffed. So
how about a hand for the finance team? Hey. All right. That bar could never come down, okay? All right.
All right. Well, we'll keep going with that. Next thing I want to do is recognize our financial planning team. They come every month presenting updates on how we're doing with the budget. They work really diligently to work with you to get these budgets put together every year. So thank you to Michelle, Kathleen, and Shane for their work on that, on the budget front. So really quick, we're going to go into the 2022 financial report. All in all, we're going to, as usual, we talk a lot about the general fund, so that's where a lot of my focus is going to be. And we're going to start off talking about our revenues. Good news here. Compared to budget, our revenues for the general fund came in over 8% over budget. If you remember when we put the 2022 budget together, that was back in 2021. We still had many uncertainties about what kind of impacts COVID would have on our revenue streams. So we were really conservative when we put those budgets together. Keynote is the sales tax. You can see sales tax revenues did come in the general fund almost 33% above budget, so nearly $7 million above budget. Going into the 2023 budget, we have made modifications to those numbers to put them a little closer in alignment to where they should be, and Michelle will tell you a little bit more about that as well. We saw increases in our utility tax above budget of about 7.9%. That is primarily made up of electric coming in about $962,000 higher, and also garbage at $460,000 higher than anticipated. We did see everything else coming in above budget, but we'll go a little bit more into some of those details as we look at the next slide. So this slide here is, now we talked about our actuals compared to our budget. This is comparing 2021 actuals to 2022 budget. And of note, we did talk a little bit about taxes, with sales tax coming in higher than budget, compared to last year, sales taxes came in $3.1 million over budget for the general fund, and B&O taxes came, not over budget, over the prior year's actual, and B&O tax came in $2.45 million greater than 2021. The licenses and permits, you're going to see 19.45% for 8% increase in those. That has a lot to do with the efforts made by our economic and community development team as they reached out to collect some of these revenues that were owing for plan check fees and other items. So kudos to them for that. Overall, licenses and permits came in $1.4 million higher than the year before. Charges for services came in $3.19 million, and again, that had to do with those plan check fees. One of the things that looks really unusual, and if you look at that, that's going to be your interest in miscellaneous. And there is a significant decline there. So I want to talk a little bit about this because this won't be the first time you see it. And at the end of every year, we need to adjust our investments to reflect their market value. So for example, if the city were to shut down at the end of the year, what could we liquidate all of those investments for? Well, you know, when we, with our long-term investment portfolio, we don't really want to sell off investments that are yielding lower interest rates because then we realize losses. So we want to just hang on to them and kind of see it through. So these are what are called unrealized loss. These are book entries. They are not real losses. And that's what you're seeing here. It's an accounting standard that requires us to do this entry at the end of every year. 2022, that market value adjustment, because you've seen interest rates go up pretty quickly. So we had locked into some investments at that lower interest rate, and this is what you're seeing, the reflection of that. If we were to have taken that out, you would see increases in interest in miscellaneous category. We also had fines and forfeitures that are coming in lower than they had come in the year before. This has to do with just the reduction in the amount of traffic violations, parking violations, and other items there. We did, I mentioned that the permits and plan review fees, if you can see, as you can see for 2022, we have received in $11.5 million. That is primarily reflected with the plan review. You can see that is up $2.27 million higher than it was the year before. This has a lot to do, again, with those efforts from our permit center to be able to collect those fees that weren't coming in during COVID. So we're going to continue to monitor how those items are coming in. Right now, compared to 2019, the pre-pandemic, we're $1.25 million higher in overall permit and plan revenue than we were in 2019. Utility taxes, they are coming in over year over year, a little bit higher. In fact, it's for the city utilities, which would be our water, sewer, and drainage, the utility taxes related to those are up 1.9%. We're still seeing increases in our electric, gas, garbage, utility tax revenues, but decreases in telephone and cable, which has been pretty standard. You guys have heard an awful lot about that over the years, the recent years at least. Spending. Okay, so we've talked about revenue. Let's go to the general fund and start looking at spending. Overall, we have underspent our budget by 6.81%. So we had anticipated to spend more than we did. We had savings of about $1.8 million in our salaries and benefits. This has to do with salary savings, vacant positions, as I think you've heard a lot of us talk about the difficulty getting these positions filled, and so that is representative there in that savings. Also, there are savings in both the supplies and equipment and the services and allocations within the general fund. Looking at the services and allocations, that 14% looks really large, but That has to do with the fact that we do have some ARPA dollars that were budgeted in 2022 but not yet spent, and those have been rolled over into 2023 to be spent, and that's why you're seeing the big variance there. So diving just a little bit deeper into this, if you're looking at year-to-year comparison, for salaries, you're seeing an increase of 9.5%. That has to do with COLAs that were given back in October 2021, and then also COLAs that were given on January 1st for everyone else. So you're going to definitely see salaries go up. The benefits portion of that, you would have expected it to go up similarly, but it didn't. And I do have an explanation for that. Okay. So the Department of Retirement Systems lowered the city's share of contributions and the employee's share of contributions into the retirement system. So that actually did save us money, and that's why you're not seeing such an increase in benefits related to benefits.
So they lowered the city contribution. Did they offset it themselves, or is it just the state?
The state sets it themselves, and they do it. Last year, there were excess funds in those retirements, so they realized they could adjust it accordingly. So they have actuaries who look at these and work with them to set the proper rate. Okay. Then really quickly, looking at supplies and equipment and services and allocations, there were increases in those. We would expect to see that. Primarily, if you start looking at inflation, we do know that things are costing more. Some of the services and allocations, we're seeing that big increase. There was some one-time expense that was in there, and then also we have allocations that hit that. And you know, looking at our insurance funds and some of our internal allocations, those costs have gone up. So that's what's reflective in that amount there. General funds. So what you see here is the blue portion of those lines is the required minimum fund balance for the general fund. And in 2022, which is the top graph, you can see from 2020 to 22, it's grown. We have been very conservative with our budgeting, not knowing what to do as we get through COVID. We also know that we do have a structural imbalance that we are going to end up tapping into those dollars as a bridge as we work through some of that. The primary reason you're seeing the increase in this fund balance in 2022 are the fact that revenues did come in over budget by 8.4% and expenditures came in under budget at 6.8%. So that's the general fund. So now let's go through with all of the other funds. Many of the things are, for the sake of time, I'm going to try not to repeat myself too much over, because many of these things have the same situation that we just talked about. We know sales tax went up. We know B&O tax is going up. Looking here at this fund, one of the things that impacts the taxes that we haven't talked about is real estate excise tax. Real estate excise tax is one-time money we use for capital. And those dollars, we are always conservative when we budget them, but we make it up when we go through the budget process because we tap into that fund balance to spend them down later. Real estate excise tax came in $7.2 million above budget for 2022. The other item of note is the intergovernmental revenue, which is $1.5 million over budget, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Is that the motor vehicle excise tax criminal justice revenues have come in above budget by about $476,000. And then we received the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant a couple years back, and then because of accounting, you have to let it sit in an account that's called unearned revenue, and you don't recognize it until you use it. And this year, they had used $675,000 in 2022, so then we got to recognize that revenue. It's not new revenue. It was there. It just moved on the financial statement, so that's why you'll see that. And then again, we talked about the interest fair market value adjustment down below. All right, now this is, we talked budget to actual, now this is looking at actual to actual. And let's see if I can. One of the items that we haven't talked about already is the, and this is in all other funds, the intergovernmental, what page? Hold on, I think I might be on the wrong one. Did I go backwards? No, I think I skipped too far. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so the intergovernmental revenue, you're going to see a decline there. That decrease is related to the streamlined sales tax dollars. As you guys recall, back in 2021, we had received, once again, the streamlined sales tax dollars, but we also received a retro payment. And so now going into this year, those dollars are going down. That will decline by the 20% every year. So you're going to continue to see this pop up on here as each year is a little bit of a decline over the next several years. 2026 is 2026, yes. And so you will see that decrease there. Fines and forfeitures, year over year, those are down as well. That's primarily related to some state seized proceeds that are lower from this year than last year. And that pretty much makes up the bulk of that. And then once again, the interest decline in the fair market value, year over year. All right, so we've talked about the revenues. Now on to the expenditure side. Once again, expenditures did come in under budget, salaries and benefits for exactly the same reason that we talked about a little bit ago. The supplies and equipment, now this is under budget by $4.3 million, and I believe you have heard some conversations about the delay in trying to get vehicles. We can order them but not get them in, and so that's happened. We've during 2022, Fleet received $2.25 million of ARPA funding to be able to purchase some vehicles, and most of that had not yet come in at the end of 2022. So that's a big piece of that variance that you're seeing right there.
So eventually that will work. That will.
Absolutely.
That expense come.
You will, and what you'll end up seeing is the budget will carry over for those pieces that were unspent, and if they come in next year, you're not going to see a budget variance, but what you'll probably see is that increase in expenditure for year over year for the vehicles. Fingers crossed. And so that's really the only big piece of significance with this area. So now looking at, instead of looking at budget, we're going to look at 2021 actual to 2022 actual. And again, same thing, salaries, we have COLAs that play into that. Benefits, you're only seeing a 0.05%. Again, that has to do with DRS, contribution rates going down. But when we're looking at the supplies and equipment, that is up by 19.6%, or about 1.6 million. And that has to do with the capital program for the Showware Center. If you recall, Tim Higgins came down and gave a presentation on what capital projects he would be doing. So some of the things that were completed last year and worked on, the scoreboard, the ice deck, and the kitchen equipment. So that's what you're seeing for the increase related to supplies and equipment.
Okay.
All right, boy, I'm flying through this. This is great. So on to capital. I really don't have that much to share with you, and this is really hard to see. In fact, I might look over this way. It's a little bit easier because my font's even smaller here. So what we've done is over the last 4 years, we've put the top 10 projects and what percentage those projects made up of our total capital program. And so as you can see in 2022, there were overlays that were done, the Downey Farmstead work, West Hill Reservoir. So there's a variety of different projects that have gone on in 2022, and what you can see there makes up 62.5% of those projects. So for 2022, overall, tax revenue came in better than anticipated, which is a great thing. Through 2022, sales tax remained strong. In fact, came in 12% greater than it did in 2021. B&O tax continues to remain strong. It came in just over budget. And then department expenditures came in under budget. And so I think what is important for you to hear now as well, what does this mean for 2023? This is good and great to know. And this is where I'd like to call Michelle up to kind of walk you through where we're at through May.
Good afternoon, Council. I will be presenting the May 2023 monthly financial report. So we'll start off talking about the general fund, and I've highlighted the sales tax revenue, which Paula has just talked about. It's going to be hard to compare. Like I mentioned last time I was here, we're not comparing apples to apples because we shifted some of the revenues around. So now 100% of sales tax is in the general fund. But when you look at March, April, and May and compare them to all the sales tax received in 2022 to 2023, we are actually coming in 4% higher than we were last year. So that's the good news, is that we really haven't seen a reduction. January and February were a little bit lower, but hopefully this trend continues. And if it does, we plan to come in at least $1 million over budget. Utility taxes are also coming in strong as well. Same with them, there's a little bit of a revenue shift there with the internal utility taxes, but when we look at the other ones for electric, gas, garbage, telephone, and cable, those are all actually coming in pretty good. Electric is averaging 9% higher in 2022 than 2021. That's about $52,000 a month greater. Gas is 26% higher, or $58,000 a month higher. Garbage is 12% higher, or $30,000 a month higher. Telephone is actually about even. It's actually coming in $280 higher a month. And then cable is 5% lower, which is about $6,700 a month lower.
Michelle, how can you explain why, is this a trend where we think that, the gas and electric, they're coming in higher, or what's?
PSE had a rate increase in November of 2022, which is the reason those have gone up in the last few months. So when we look at the year-to-year monthly comparison for the general fund, if you look at it straight line, you would expect the revenues and expenditures to be at 41.6% of budget. And you can see that the revenues are higher than that and that the expenditures are 5% lower than that. So that's great news. The one department that is coming in slightly higher than the straight line would be fire contracted services, and that is because the yearly fire insurance premium is coming in, it just came in May, and so that kind of skews the amounts, $370. So you'll see that even out as the year goes along. So nothing really to point out on this first slide for the year-to-year comparison for the other funds that we didn't talk about last time, which we spoke about. Lodging tax and capital resources fund, but I did highlight a couple on the next slide for water. So water is coming in, the revenues are coming in higher, but so are the expenditures, but those are budgeted to come in that way. So the revenues are coming in higher, and that's partially because of the water increase that were done for water sales, and that's about $860,000, and then there's also coming in higher is the system development charges. That's about $365,000. And also the fund is taking advantage of the higher investment income that we are getting as well. That's about $300,000 higher so far this year. Expenditures are higher, and that is mostly due to the transfers out for projects. But we transfer money into the projects as they're needed, and then we transfer the full amount in October, but they've needed more this year in the beginning, so that's why that's a little bit higher. And then solid waste, the revenues are coming in higher, and that has to do with the extra revenues that the city's been getting from Republic for an adjustment they are giving us monthly. So we should hopefully continue to get that money, but I'm not really sure if that's going to continue or not. And the expenditures look like they're coming in lower than normal, but that's just because in 2022 we had some one-time expenditures that makes that look like it's a little bit off. But you can see it kind of shows this similar trend in 2021. And on this last slide, unemployment, I highlighted the expenditures because it seems like there's a large variance of 91% from 23 to 22, but that is because 2022 just had a lower expenditure amount for judgment and damages at this point in time, but the 118,000, that is pretty consistent for 19, 20, and 21. So that's what we normally see for that expense. So are there any questions for the monthly report or for the year-end presentation that Paula gave?
Luckily, the monthly report, I mean, we're off to a good start.
Yes.
I don't see anything.
Nothing is of a concern right now.
Okay, and I think the year-end report was solid too. I don't know, team, any question? Are we good here?
Good, look good. Great job, you guys.
Hey, good job. Where are we putting our plat at? Is you got it, are they all over in the finance area or what?
I believe they are up in the mayor's office or
In the display cabinet.
in the display cabinet out here.
Okay, we gotta make sure we get a look at that on the way out, so. Hey, great job finance. And you guys are small, mean, and lean. So, thank you. I know how hard you guys work, and I had to take finance many times in college, but it's okay. So, we got you guys to depend on to keep it straight. So, excellent job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So let's move on here. Chad, you gonna get us going on the transportation sustainability?
Yeah, I'll get us started. I know we want to try and get done in about a half an hour. We've got a 45-minute presentation. We're going to shoehorn into 30 minutes, but I think we can get there fairly quickly.
We believe in you, Chad.
You can do it.
I've set it up here before, and we say it in the department all the time. In Public Works, you know you're doing well when nobody knows you're around. So, with regard to the transportation system, there are times when they know we're around. So that's not it's not to say it's all doom and gloom, but we do know that we've got some headwinds going right now. We have a number of fronts that we're applying pressure to. I think that Bill and Rob are going to be able to give you some of the details, but I want to make sure that we're up front just talking about how we're going to deal with the issues. So I'll let Bill and Rob talk, and then I'll come back in at the end.
Can I ask you a question before you get started? And
Yeah.
This is a funny thing. So Smith coming down 512, I know that doesn't belong to the city, but how can we get the state to do something with that road? I mean, it is like the worst.
Yeah, those sections from 94th and down into the lower end. We do send in complaints to the state, and we try and get them to come out and take care of the really bad patches. But, you know.
Complete overlay.
Yeah, and it will be programmed for complete overlay, and I don't know what year. I know they were planning on it, but they did this section out on Kent Kangley, or further out on Kent Kangley first. The section on Canyon, which I think was done probably 20 plus years ago. It's on the horizon, but we'll find a date and come back to council with it.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Just push the button, it goes, right?
All righty. Glad to have you're a council member, right?
That's, yes, sir, I wasn't going to mention that, though, but thank you.
Glad to have you, council member. Okay.
Thank you, Council President. As Chad mentioned, that we'll try not to cut too far into your council meeting tonight with our presentation, so I'm just getting there as well. We're moving forward here. Rob and I are going to be talking about a sustainable transportation system. We're going to really kind of pare it down and get through this pretty quick, but you know, overall, we're really looking for ways to move towards a more sustainable future. So here's 212th. This is a perfect road. I wish all our roads could look like this, although this is 212th, and I don't know how we got it with no vehicles on it. But that's a great photo there. So Concrete roads is 76th Avenue by the Blue Origin. This is, in my opinion, more of a sustainable pavement, although it's quite expensive. You don't have to touch it for another 50 years other than line striping as well. Part of the transportation system consists of pavement, traffic signals systems, sidewalks, street lights systems, just to name a few. We're approaching about $2 billion worth of assets out there. And the next slide here is talking about, all the things that belong to us. I'm not going to read through them all, but as you can see, there's quite a bit there other than road surface. Some of the in-house roads completions we've done is here's 114th. We have 100th Avenue, 64th Avenue down in the valley. Some of the contract completions, I know you've all seen these out there. We have 268th up there by Glen Nelson Park, 112th up here just south of Park Orchard. And you got 124th right there up on the north of Panther Lake, and then 94th, that big long stretch that goes all the way to 218th, 218th. One of our big projects that we did this year, we had a big problem down at 79th Avenue down there where it's just a low section of road that all the water seemed to collect to. Storm drainage and street maintenance combined efforts, and actually laid some pipe in there and conveyed all that water into an enclosed system. And the street guys came in and raised the road and paved it, and went out there today, and no water standing there. So 2023, this year's work plan, as you can see, I'm not going to go over all these roads with you. It's all paired out between West Hill, Valley, and East Hill. We try every year to make that a concerted effort to make a move on each of these sections. So part of the work plans for the in-house is you can see these roads. You got 64th Avenue, 212th. Coincidentally, they just started grinding it today. West James Street will be next week. We got 77th Avenue and 212th, southbound or northbound. That's all done. So those guys are moving pretty quick. And then you've got a lower photo there on the right that'll show you the work they were doing out there. And then we got another little road over here, 103rd and 216th. Some of the contract work, if you all notice, I know Councilmember Fincher, she's probably driving up Military and Wreath. 259's all under, it's all ground out right now. They're going to do a big overlay through the intersection and out towards I-5 there. So curb ramps, every time we do a road surface treatment, we have to look at the curb ramps in that area. As you can see on here, you look at them, you go, well, what's wrong with that one? Well, when these were installed, they had different standards at that time. Right now, they don't, we don't have to go in and upgrade them unless we do a project at this time because they're still accessible and usable. The only one that is up to date standard-wise is the 4th and Meeker on the lower right there. So there is an added component to any of the pavement work we do. Next year's work, again, we concerted effort to make sure we fan across the whole city here from West Hill to East Hill, between in-house work and our work and contract work. We're just making a big effort there. Some of that work, as you can see on here, some of those areas that we're going to get with in-house projects, 80%, I can go through all these, but it's just the same thing. You just look at the conditions of the road, they need the work, so we're doing it. So 224th contract projects, we got 64th and 228th, and this is a very bad intersection. Where we have to fill a pothole in that intersection, we have to have a police officer on board to do traffic control for us. And then, of course, we have 116th, 244th, also at 248th, and then 235th and 105th. Federal grant to overlay East Valley Highway 212th to 196. This includes both intersections of 212th and 196. It's about, they're going out to bid later on this year. Hopefully we'll start the work and then complete it by by next summer of next year. And it's about a $3 million project, so it is grant funded. And so moving on to our maps, this is some of the roads that we've actually had projects on, and they're all grant funded here, thankfully. And this is talking about the different tiers. We got tier 1, tier 2, has a lot to do with the tonnage of vehicles that cross over these certain parts of the road to make them eligible for certain types of grants. Tier 1, obviously, you get more points towards the money, but we're still trying on all of them. Now, this is the rest of the roads. About 87% of our roads are not eligible for grants. So we have to figure out with the funding we have available, how we're going to dispense that money to do some of the roads. So with that, how do we determine that? We use a certain criteria to do this work. We have pavement conditions. We have traffic volume, which is a big consideration. Areas of prolific potholes where it takes most of my maintenance guys' time to go fill these holes every day in the wintertime. And then funding, the available funding that's given to us at that time. And also we coordinate with other improvements such as grant, total projects, and like that. So we try to do the best we can with the roads selection. And we did have one last thing on there. It was called Brent's decision. That's our supervisor there. He's the one that's the boots on the ground guy. And he sees it all. So he has a great input for a lot of this thing. So this is an overall condition map of what we have. You know, you got the reds obviously are poor. Oranges are fair. And then both greens are good and excellent. So here's a little quick synopsis on what each one of these are. Excellent is an example is 212th over there by Riverview. It was just completed last year. No problems with it at all. The lower right is good. It's got like one crack in it. Still great. So a good majority of our roads are excellent to good and fair. As you can see, the cracks are really coming out there. It's good, great for crack sealing here as well. And then poor over on the lower left, that needs help. I mean, you can see it's already pothole after pothole filling constantly. And it's not just the one pothole that comes back out again, it's another one that grows next to it. So, moving on, this is our overall network over the last 8+ years. As you can see, there's only a swing difference of about 4 points here. But if you see it towards 2019 and 2020, those are the high areas there. And I believe it's due to all the bigger work that we're doing, like the 212s, the 76, the 228th corridor, all those add up into the overall score. So, and then we're coming down again to the 65 level at where we are currently. And a lot of those poor and failed road, or poor and fair roads are adding into that considerably. So quickly what we got over 6 miles of concrete roads. We got 294 miles of asphalt, 8.5 miles of chip seal, and gravel. Believe it or not, we have gravel roads that are particularly the alleys down here, 2.5 miles of that. So we're looking at different ways to spend our money, right, to get the most bang for our buck. So here's a picture of East Valley Highway. Last year we decided, well, we're just going to do dig outs because a complete overlay and dig out would be very expensive. So what we did is we leveraged a grant for this, and we went ahead and did the patching last year. And this year, like I said earlier, we're going to go for that work. So, and I think Chad wants to speak on that.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second. Okay. I just want to make sure we highlight this. So, as Bill pointed out a couple slides ago, we've got our pavement rating, and it was starting to come up. We had the money that Council made those hard decisions in the early 2010s to institute the B&O tax, the solid waste utility tax, and we started to apply that money toward the pavement. Those revenues have stayed relatively flat as the expenses or cost of materials has gone up. So we've been able to do a little bit less and a little bit less, and that's where we're starting to see those numbers come down a little bit. And so we're looking at the system as a whole, and where Bill's folks are going out, they're getting tired. I mean, they're having to fill potholes constantly. And so we were asking ourselves, what can we do to stretch the dollars a little bit longer? And this, we think, is a good application. We went out on East Valley Highway a year before last, and we picked out areas where there was really bad rutting or pavement failures, in between pavement that was decent, not great, but decent. And the original plan was to go out and do these patches and then try a chip seal on East Valley Highway, which is something we haven't done on an arterial that size for quite some time. In the meantime, we were successful in getting the federal grant that Bill just talked about. So we have these repairs already done, and we're able to go back in with the federal money and fix the intersections at 196th and 212th, which have been issues for several years now. and do that whole section as brand-new pavement. But without the grant dollars, we can't continue to do that. So on an arterial like 132nd, we're going to go back in and do these patches, large areas where we can patch pavement in between, or the bad areas that are in between good areas, which can look a little strange. And so it's part of what we want to talk about today, and I'll wrap up with it as well. We think it's a good economical way of moving forward. It's not going to look great, and we want to make sure that both the council and the community are aware of what we're trying to do. We may even get some complaints from time to time. Why can't this whole thing just be overlaid and look brand new? We would love that too. We would love to start at the south end of 132nd and work all the way through town, but that's more than multiple years of budget to get that done. So we're in that mode of trying to make sure what we've got, we're keeping passable. So.
Thanks, Chad. And so, again, we're looking at different ways to make that money go longer, dig out patches, chip seals, and other projects all through the grant funding process. So here's what Brent's Life is all about. Potholes, this is from January of last year through the end of last month. You know, we have over 4,000 potholes that they filled over that year. So these are all on the fair to poor roads. So as you can see, they're quite busy, and it's nonstop from October through April that they're out every day filling potholes. And here's a few pictures of them actually doing that. And as I alluded to earlier during this meeting, is that, you know, a lot of these drivers out here aren't as courteous as they used to be. And so we have multiple trucks out to do these higher volume roads. So, and police officers for certain intersections.
Two numbers, 4,000 potholes in a year, so big number. If you can imagine going out there with a truck full of cold mix and filling these things. Bill's guys are on it, and again, those are the areas we want to try and concentrate the dollars, because they're out there, and as Bill pointed out earlier, you get one, and then one blows up next to it, and you keep making your way along. The bad thing is it's happening. The good thing is our guys are jumping on them as soon as they find out about them, or if they see them start to form, they'll take care of them. So we do get a lot of complaints about potholes. And well, first off, we get notifications. So thanks to everybody who gives us, will get on C-Click Fix and tell us where they see a problem. Bill's guys get out there and Brent's guys get out there right away and fix it. Because of that, we still don't pay out a lot in claims, because we only pay out for a claim when we've ignored a pothole problem, and we don't do that. We jump on them. So it's important to note that even though we're filling 4,000 of them, we do, how many claims a year? Less than 20?
Less than 20.
Yeah. So.
All right, thanks, Chad. Moving on to another unfunded mandate. In the previous years, we've had our sign retroreflectivity, where you have the brighter background and the larger legends, so we can read those more easily at night. Now the feds are gonna be moving it onto our line striping as well. The retroreflectivity of our line striping, it's for better visibility. Self-driving cars and driver-assisted cars use these painted lines to, like lane assist and all that, they use that as well. So what's next? The city will need to create a new program between Rob and our team. We're gonna be trying to figure out what that looks like. These are all federal mandates, and they come with no money. So it's gonna require us to do more frequent painting and line striping. So right now we do one for the majority of our roads, and then we come back and do it a second time for some of the ones that have more problems. So I'm going to breeze through this here real quick. We got, we got 25 bridges out there for motor vehicles, and I believe we have 7 pedestrian bridges out there as well. One of the quick ones I wanted to talk to you about is the Meeker Street Bridge painting and deck repairs. That's a big project, and guess what? It's 100% grant funded. So that's total deck repairs and some minor repairs to the structure underneath, and a total paint job on the whole thing. And last time it was done was 1994. So it's been a while. Some of the challenges will be the traffic control. 6 to 8 weeks if it's a full closure, and it could be up to a double if it's only a single lane closure. The challenges are we have businesses and residents on the other side of that bridge.
What's the timing for that?
The timing for that is it's going to go out to bid later on this fall, and hopefully we'll get the bid opening by the first of the year. and get the work started, late spring, early summer. And it needs to be all spent to get that money by the end of the year, so.
What color we said we're gonna paint that?
Sorry?
What color we gonna paint that?
That's up for debate yet. Hopefully, we can paint it the same color, but we'll see. I don't know where we have to go with that, but that hasn't been decided yet.
I'm seeing over there, so. Sure, council, we like to have some input.
So anyway, here's a quick shot of our sidewalks here. This is about 336 miles of public use sidewalks, and we have about 50+ miles of private use sidewalks. And then here's the map of all the missing sidewalks that we have out there. These could be unimproved roads. These could be neighborhoods that just never had sidewalks in the developed phases of it. But we're considering any time we do a road project or any kind of the grants that were spoken of earlier tonight, we have opportunities to put those in. We'll take full advantage of that. So part of that is our inspection and maintenance. We have a guy go out and every year that goes out and checks these roads, or checks these sidewalks, and then we do some quick mitigation on these if needed. One of that is grinding these lips flush, or we'll shim them so we can get a nice ramp to them, or we'll do a complete removal and replace, which we did out on 64th and 216th out there. So this is the work we have done over the last 8 years of sidewalk repairs and replacements. And there's a couple in there that are gaps along Reith Road, and also 260th, as Councilmember Fincher is well aware of that as well. So that's all I have. Rob, you're up next.
Thank you.
You held up your end of the bargain, so we'll see how Rob brings it home, okay?
You're going for me? I mean,
Thank you. You're good.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Bill.
Good evening, council members. Rob Brown, Transportation Engineering Manager, Public Works. I'll try and keep up Bill's pace here. We'll just get through these really quickly. Traffic signal system. So our traffic signal system can obviously consist of more than just the specific traffic signals. I think in the interest of time, we'll just consider it pretty much anything that uses electricity for the transportation system. Traffic signals and pedestrian crossings, a couple things to point out. Last year we installed APS at 7 intersections. APS are accessible pedestrian signals. Those are required by the Americans with Disabilities Act to meet the accessibility requirements. So we upgraded 7 last year. In the interest of safety, we also installed a leading pedestrian interval at 5 intersections. And this is the thing we've been talking about a couple times over the last few years, where we give pedestrians about a 4-second head start to start crossing the street and get out in the crosswalk before the cars get the green light. So that provides better pedestrian visibility, and human eyes also drawn towards movement, so people see people, the drivers see the people moving in the sidewalks. And so also improves safety there. Some signal damage. We had some signal damage just in the last couple of years, or excuse me, last couple of months. Since the beginning of the year, we've had 2 signals damaged by vehicle crashes and 1 signal electrocuted. So 68th Avenue and Todd Boulevard, this is just on the border with Tukwila, the north end of town, over on also called West Valley. Those are the pictures there on the top half of the screen. You can see Puget Sound Energy had a transmission line come down. It was hit by a branch, and the line actually broke and landed on top of our traffic signal and got hit with well over 100,000 volts. And you can see that's just some of the damage. The picture on the upper left side, as well as the center on the right side, that's actually where the aluminum signal housings exploded. Those are pieces of aluminum just popped out of those signal housings. And then we've got a whole stack of things that look like that upper right picture there, where you've got burnt circuit boards that our crew, there's 5 people in our signal crew. They rebuilt the entire intersection, that traffic signal, in less than a day. So got that back up and going. Lower pictures, a couple of things. Lower left, you can see we had a vehicle end up, that's actually sitting on the foundation, and the signal controller is sitting next to it on the right side of the picture. And the other one I wanted to point out, the bottom right, that is 84th, so East Valley and 196th. Car loss control hit the traffic signal controller. You can see it laying behind the power service cabinet there in the edge of the picture. That traffic signal is actually still operational. Our crews are actually able to stand that back up and repair the cabinet and get that signal going for just a couple bucks. Streetlight damage. When the slide was put together last week, we had 7 knockdowns. Over the weekend, we had 3 more. So we've got 10 knockdowns to date. We've managed to restore 6, not those same sticks. A couple interesting ones. Upper left corner, that's Meeker at Ethos. Car hit the pole, the fixture broke. Unfortunately, once we did a little more inspection, that fixture was a complete write-off. Thanks to some work by Kelly, we now have an American-made steel version of this that will stand up to a little bit more abuse. So going forward, we've got some good signals there. Then a couple other ones, upper right, that was just some weather. Lower left, truck went around the corner, knocked that one down. And then lower right, that's Central Avenue, that happened over the weekend. Truck actually managed to knock down streetlights on both sides of the road, right there. Actually, the signal you're looking at, that's Central looking at Smith Street. Wire theft, this is a big deal for us. Last calendar year, so 2022, we had 36,000 feet of wire stolen. To put that in perspective, that is 6.8 miles. And that's about how far you would have to drive if you drove from City Hall here to Costco in Covington. That's how much wire was stolen. Material cost of that was $37,000. It took us 380 hours to restore it for a labor cost of about $30,000. So just under $70,000 in wire theft. So we have taken some measures to try and slow that down. We've welded the junction box lids closed. We've welded the bridge deck lids closed. So we've also started replacing our copper wire, which I have a sample of here. These are our copper wires, as typical what we use on our system. We've started replacing that with aluminum wire. It still conducts electricity, but aluminum doesn't have nearly the resale value that the copper does. And so that has, in the areas where we've replaced the wires, a lot of times they'll break into the junction box and cut the wire, realize it's aluminum, and leave it alone. We can just go back and splice instead of replacing it. One of the other problems we have is once they steal the copper wire, a lot of times they will go around the corner and they will strip the wire out, so we're left with a big pile of insulation, which you can see there on the picture on the right. That's at the bottom of the 277th corridor trail. That's on the Green River Road. Speaking of 277th, in the last couple of months, we've been hit really hard on the 277th corridor. The thieves have stolen the wire basically from Auburn all the way up the hill around the corner onto 116th. So this is, so right now we estimate that we will actually need a contract because not only did they steal the wire, but they broke the junction boxes. I mentioned before that we've been welding the lids closed to try and prevent people from breaking into them. Not only they pry the lids off, but they've pried the metal ring around it, which means the junction box needs to be replaced. And so with all those junction boxes in the road that need to be replaced, and the wire, which, by the way, I have a sample of that. So this is our typical streetlight wire. This is the size. This is a wire that runs up the 277th corridor. This is more like a freeway system where the wires are huge and the distances are very long. So we estimate the cost to repair this at over $50,000. Vandalism and power theft. People break into the streetlights. They use the bollards. We found several RVs over the last year just plugged into the bollards that are typically used for holiday lighting. And we've since turned those off, and we now coordinate with the local businesses for when they need those on, and again, typically for holidays. Lower left, it's just streetlight. Somebody pried open the handhold on the streetlight to try and get power out of it. Could be to charge a cell phone, could be to power an RV. And then just vandalism for no good reason. The picture on the right, that's actually the box that powers the traffic signal at Kent Kangley and 111th. They broke the conduit and just cut the wires. Nothing was stolen. They just cut the wires for the sake of cutting the wires. And just like a lot of the other groups in the city, we've got problems with graffiti. So just random graffiti on our service cabinets and our streetlight cabinets. We have been working with the Parks Department for the last several years to do the artistic wraps. Those are, the locations are selected. We work with the Parks Department to determine the locations that have the highest graffiti and also the higher visibility locations. And then the Art Commission selects the artwork and then the Parks Department installs that artwork on those boxes. So those lower two pictures, they still get tagged, not nearly as much. It's been a big help in that graffiti. The picture there in the lower left, that's 132nd and 256th. It does have an anti-graffiti coating, so we use a special cleaner to clean it off. So typically the artwork survives pretty well, the graffiti, but it's still a time and effort to do it. And then one of the newer ones there you can see on the lower right at Central Avenue at Gap Street. Residential traffic calming program, just a quick update. In 2022, we had 24 requests, down from 33 in 2021. That could partially be attributed to COVID and the fact that more people are out and about in 2022 and not sitting in their houses listening to the cars go by. Last year, we did complete 3 installations as part of the overlay programs. 148th, 263rd, and 144th over near Northeast Lake Meridian, and then 268th between Military and 37th. That's near Star Lake Elementary School. And then the call it the Bridges neighborhood, but to not confuse it with the Big Bridges neighborhood. This is the neighborhood south of Willis between the railroad tracks and Central Avenue. Traffic calming in there last year as well. We do have 57 open requests, 31 are qualified, and 27 are awaiting traffic studies. And as we've heard Bill talk about construction costs, where we used to see speed cushion costs somewhere in the $4,500 to $5,000 range, bids now are $8,000 to $10,000. So they're basically doubled. ADA transition plan, one of the things that we do work on is the ADA transition plan, and we work with the streets department. Bill mentioned those curb ramps. We've been hearing that the ADA transition plan will need to be current to qualify for federal funding. The Americans with Disabilities Act has required that transition plan since 1992. And so the federal government we're hearing rumors that they're going to require that anytime we get federal funding. So we are currently updating our document. The document itself is being updated, and we're continuing with the inventory. Once the document is in a draft form, then we'll take that out and do the required public outreach and get the public input, and then it will be considered for adoption. So we plan on having that done in time for the grant season next year. Transportation safety, I know you've been sitting here for a long time and you've seen a lot of information, but there's some really important things here on this slide. We've got the crashes, some of the crash types for 2022 last year, compared that to 2021. And then also the 5-year average. And we did that because 2020, 2021 were odd years because of COVID. A couple interesting things to note here, and also some depressing things, unfortunately. The city average is around 2,300 reported crashes per year. That's been fairly consistent over the years. In 2021, the crashes were down in most categories. But again, because of COVID, we also included the 5-year average. 2022 crashes were closer to that 5-year average than 21. Serious crashes were up last year compared to 2021 and the 5-year average. This does follow the national trend. Our fatal crashes last year were in the same range as the previous years, so there's there. And bicycle and pedestrian crashes last year were down. And this is actually contrary to the national average. Overall, nationally, pedestrian and bicycle crashes have gone up significantly in the last couple of years, so that's pretty good news there. And we are making some progress. Recently, the crews, with the help of some of our friends from operations, we just finished a new new crosswalk installation on Wreath Road, West Fenwick Park. This connects the church on the south side with the Parks Department releases out in the weekends with the park on the north side. So that was completed actually last week. Our crews last year installed 1.2 miles of fiber optic communications cable, replacing the old copper cable. So that gives us a lot more bandwidth for the existing data on the signal system and as well as future expansion. And then signal improvements at 208th and 124th. This is right outside Kent Ridge High School. Crews worked really hard December through about March to change the way the signal operates, basically removing the conflict between left turning vehicles having to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalks. So now those left turns are completely separate from the pedestrian crossing. So big improvement in safety and operations there. And with that, thank you very much.
Wrapping up fast, again, I think Bill pointed out, we'd love to see streets like we have on the left. We know that in a lot of places, what we have on the right is what we're dealing with, and we're trying to make sure we're able to use our money wisely to keep the entire city moving along with as few potholes as possible. This is a picture showing how much progress we've made between 2013 and 2023, so the last 11 years of pavement improvements we've made around the city. And again, that was going back to that graph that showed the pavement condition rating going up just a little bit and then starting to slide back down. The good news is we were able to hit all these streets. The rougher part of that news is that because most of the city was built with asphalt instead of concrete originally, we tend to have to replace it with asphalt, and asphalt has a much shorter shelf life. So many of these areas that we overlaid in 2013 will start coming up shortly as needing to be overlaid again. And again, we see that inflation is just killing us on the cost of materials. And so the cost of all these other items come out of the same funding arena for pavement preservation. So all staff, when we have these thefts and accidents, almost invariably when people get into those big accidents, they don't have insurance. And so a lot of that's coming out of our bottom line. Again, as an example of the increase in costs on 212th, this is a section that we think will have a really good shot at getting grant funds on going out into the 27-28 timeframe, 2027 to 2028. But we know that between 2018 and 2023, that went from about a $3 million job to a $4 million job. So it's really getting us those inflation costs and cost of materials. And again, I think just those challenges, we're butting up against theft and accidents with the same staff. So everybody's trying to keep a stiff upper lip and their chin up, but it is can be pretty daunting to keep up with this stuff, particularly the signal guys. Like Rob said, 3 knockdowns over the weekend. They have to try and keep up with those. I think we have almost 90 poles down in the city out of our over 8,000 street lights. So those are things that we just try and keep up with while trying to keep up with our regular maintenance as well. So you have a very dedicated staff trying to do this, and also on the design side, a dedicated staff trying to get more grants to pave what we can, but we've got some pretty serious challenges ahead. And you may see me come back from time to time and begging for some money.
You can beg. It's okay. Hey, Chad, I mean, with all these here poles up and knocking down, I know we do have some cameras in certain locations of the city. Are we able to capture some of those where people are knocking those down and keep going and not reporting them?
We have not. From time to time, we're able to use the cameras to find people.
Yep.
If we're sitting there watching it, we don't record that material. So that's not, we creating a public record on top of everything. They really are a live cam.
Yeah. Any question for Chad and team?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Chad. Thank you for all the work you and your team does. And I know there's a lot of sidewalks and roads to be taken care of, and we don't have enough funding. My question is related to a comment you made earlier about the numbers are going down for the BNO. Are you talking about the BNO funding is going down?
No, the funding has stayed relatively the same. It's the cost for everything else is going up. So it's essentially.
Oh, okay, got it.
It's getting smaller.
So we need to start looking at other funding options possibly in the future?
Relatively flat funding source. Salaries go up, materials go up, everything else goes up. And it's nice to have a solid source coming from the property tax, but it doesn't follow everything else when in relation to the inflation.
Thank you. Guess we'll have to start looking at something.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of work out there. I mean, we got lots of roads, right, and sidewalks and streets and so on. And, it really makes a difference when we take care of that. I was in South Carolina on a business trip all last week, and they do a really good job of taking care of their streets and roads. I mean, it's really clean and nice and updated. So it's all about funding, right, and having the money and the resource. So definitely something we'll have to continue to look at. We put a lot of investment in this already, and we want to make sure we can realize the investment and also continue to invest in more. So we look forward to you to come back begging, okay?
Thank you.
No, I'm just joking. Seriously. I know, I'm just joking. Seriously, look at you. But he said begging, not me. But coming back and helping us understand what you need to try to continue to make our city, look replicable and roads fits and everything else. So thanks to you and your team. Good job. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Question, are we done? Oh, I'm not sure she's up there. Is Councilman Fincher on the call? Any question, Councilman Fincher?
He's been kidnapped by aliens.
Councilman Fincher, you having some phone issue. We cannot hear you. So
Goodbye.
you want to try again? Nope. All right. What we'll do, you're the head of public works, so you can reach out to Chad, and I'm sure he'll be willing to follow up. Hey guys, we are gonna adjourn for our 7 o'clock meeting. Thank you.
Unless you hit Area 50.